Welcome to Cats Chats. This episode of Cats Chats is going to be introducing Tim Lindholm here from LA Metro. He's a Deputy Chief Program Management Officer for Alternative Delivery and Construction Management at Los Angeles Metro. So welcome, Tim.
Thanks for having me, Steve.
So can you just kind of we know each other for a while now, but we want to give everybody else an introduction of you and what you do. So can you just give a quick introduction of what you do at Los Angeles Metro?
Sure. So I'm the Deputy Chief Program Management Officer at LA Metro, and we're currently managing a $25 billion portfolio of about 75 projects, mix of transit projects, active transportation projects, BRT, light rail, and also we run the highway projects for the County of Los Angeles.
Okay. So I know you're from Los Angeles, but can you kind of tell us how you got to LA Metro? Because you've been there for a little while, right?
I have. I've been with LA Metro for 23 years. I hired in when we were finishing the Universal City Station on the original subway that we built.
You were 10 years old?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So I'm a geologist. It's what it's kind of how I got into the construction industry. So I was working as a geologist on the last phase of our first subway.
Okay. So I mean, LA Metro, I know it very well. Been chasing a lot of work with you guys in my career. But can you tell everybody what the current projects and what LA Metro is all about? You guys have a huge capital program.
We do have a massive capital program. So we've got 4 tax measures that we use to build all types of projects. We've got Measure A, C, which were passed in the 80s and 90s, and then Measure R and Measure M, which Measure M was passed in 2016. So all totaled, we have 2 cents on every dollar in LA County to fund transportation projects. So right now, our primary portfolio, we have we just finished the Crenshaw LAX light rail line, now called the K line. That's an 8-mile light rail that goes from the Expo line in West LA all the way down to near the airport. Right now we're building the Purple Line extension, which is our subway. We're building that in 3 phases, phase 1, 2, and 3. That'll all be open by the Olympics in 2028. We're also just about to open a light rail project called the Regional Connector project. It's a very significant project. It's about a $2 billion 2-mile tunnel through downtown that connects many of our light rail projects together. So once the Regional Connector opens, which will be in the second quarter of this year, you'll be able to take a 1-seat ride from Azusa all the way down to Long Beach, and then from the east side of LA all the way to Santa Monica. So a very transformational project. So those are the projects that we currently have going. We're also building the Airport Metro Connector Station, which will connect the Crenshaw line to the airport and an automated people mover that the airport is building. So that'll open in 2024. It's about halfway done. We're also doing a fair amount of highway projects. We have the I-5 North Highway Project, which is a capacity improvement project from Castaic all the way down to north of Burbank. So we do a lot of highway projects. So that's everything that's under construction right now. But meanwhile, we're planning the next phase of projects, which are all very substantial. So the West Santa Ana branch, which goes down into the gateway cities, the Green Line extension to Torrance, the East Side extension to Montebello, and eventually to Whittier, and I think I might be missing 1 or 2. But and the Sepulveda project, a small little tiny project, which is the Sepulveda corridor project, which will connect the valley down to the west side.
Great. Along
the 405 corridor.
So you said you went through the tax measures. That was going to be one of my questions, but what are we talking when you say 2 cents to Los Angeles is a little different than 2 cents in Kansas or something like that. So what kind of capital program does that kind of allow LA Metro to deal with?
Oh, well, right now, it's $25 billion of current in construction with about another $50 billion in planning right now. So it's a massive construction program. It's the largest construction program in the country when you total up all the highway and the transit spending.
And Measure M is different than Measure R, right?
Yeah, Measure M doesn't sunset, and actually Measure M made R not sunset.
So what does that mean?
It's a continuous tax, and it's gonna be in effect until the voters, should the voters ever decide to repeal it.
So then Measure R is I believe it's 40 billion was the number?
Somewhere around there.
And that is gonna sunset?
No, it doesn't sunset. Measure M made R so that it doesn't sunset.
Oh,
either.
okay.
Correct.
All right, great. So how is, starting to understand these different transit agencies, LA Metro seems to be a little different. Like, so from the board and the decision making and the funding component isn't necessarily coming straight from the city, or how are you able to run that transit agency versus like a New York MTA or a Chicago Transit Authority?
Well, we are definitely different in the realm of transit agencies. We have a pretty wide breadth of responsibility. So we're the planner, funder, builder, and operator for the entire county. So a lot of federal and state money that comes into our region comes through us, and we give it out, right? So that's kind of the funding piece. We also collect all of the tax measures. We do give back local return to the cities for their various transportation projects. So Measure R and M all have pieces of local return. And then we build all of the projects that are funded by these tax measures, as well as the highway projects in Los Angeles County. And then we operate all of the service, so all tied up into one agency overseen by a 13-member board.
Okay, that's huge. So I guess one of the things we had, the last podcast was with Chris Dempsey, and we had a deep discussion on ridership. And I just saw a video of Stephanie Wiggins, your CEO, having a discussion on Channel 5. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and with the pandemic, how did that impact LA Metro ridership?
Well, substantially.
Yeah.
number one.
Absolutely.
We've got a couple things going on with our ridership. Right now, one is just general work commuting patterns. Right. People are not necessarily following the same patterns that they used to because there's a lot of work from home. So I believe, at the beginning of the pandemic, our ridership probably went down by all the way to sub 50% of what it was.
Right.
I believe on the bus system, last time I checked the numbers, we're getting a little north of 70% of where we are on the bus, and probably on the rail, we're at about 68% of where we were pre-pandemic. So a long way to go to get back to our previous ridership levels. Mm-hmm. And then we're also grappling with something the whole nation's grappling with, and our region in particular is grappling with, is safety and security and the unhoused, right? Because that's certainly affecting our ridership right now, is the perception that our system isn't safe because so many people sheltering in our system, right, which we're working through right now.
Gotcha. Yeah, we were talking about this last time, but San Francisco's been hit even harder from a ridership standpoint. But a lot of that was, yes, it did have to do with the safety concerns that you're probably talking about, but they also have a lot of the work from home element to that. Do you see the ridership kind of getting back up to those pre-pandemic levels, or is this hybrid working environment here to stay, and what's the thoughts behind that?
Yeah, it's a little difficult. It's hard to answer that question because the policy framework, what our board would like to achieve is to achieve pre-pandemic ridership, right? To get back to where we were. But I think we all know that that's not in the cards, especially with the way people are working from home. So, there are some at our agency that believe, maybe 80-85% is as good as we'll ever do again of pre-pandemic levels, just because so many people don't commute into work. Not everyone's commuting into downtown or the west side anymore. They're working, maybe full-time at home or even just a day or two, and that will impact our ridership going forward.
Right. Okay. So you think around the 85% is kind of what you've been hearing about?
It's my personal feeling.
Yeah.
And it's what you'll hear some of the service planners say, but nevertheless, our goal is to get the ridership back to what it was.
Gotcha. Okay. And one of the other things that I think people don't understand is the size of the geographic footprint of mm-hmm. Los Angeles County that you serve, right? So, how you have a board that's made up of political leaders that are spanned throughout the entire county.
Correct.
So how does that political landscape look at, and how do you make every part of the geography, how do you service them and build projects out there to reach all, 88 or 89 mm-hmm. cities within Los Angeles?
88, and therein lies the difficulty, right? We do have 88 cities within the county, and one very large one as part of the 88. So our board is Across the region, we have all 5 county supervisors, 4 representatives from the city, and then there's 5, 4, there's 9, and then 4 that are directed, that are appointed from the councils of government to represent particular regions. For instance, we have one that oversees the South Bay, and one that oversees the San Fernando, that sort of thing. Yeah, and our projects, and that is one of the hard parts about building transit projects in the county of Los Angeles. It is very spread out. You know, we do have several dense centers, but not one big one. You know what I mean? And so connecting all of those in a way that works for every commuter is very difficult.
Right.
And that's what we're trying to do. You know, Measure M and R were crafted to touch every portion of the region, right? And to address the transportation issues that directly affect that particular region. You know, for instance, you know, as you get further up, you know, north of San Fernando Valley and up towards Castaic or Santa Clarita, you know, that there's more of a taste for highway projects up there, because that's the commuting patterns. You know, a big part of the success of Measure M was building a light rail line in the valley, you know, where the valley had felt historically left behind from the transit revolution. You know, same with the Southeast corridor cities, with the West Santa Ana branch. So we're really trying to build a system that gets into every region and that works for a variety of different commuting patterns.
All right. So you talked about the valley. You know, you just awarded a huge, iconic project and a light rail system up in the San Fernando Valley. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Yeah,
it's a 6.7-mile light rail that for the most part goes up Van Nuys Boulevard from the G line, which is our bus rapid transit line in Van Nuys, all the way up through Pacoima. It's a light rail project, and it is our first progressive design build mega project. So we do have a progressive design build underway on the G line improvements project, but this is our first mega transit project, and it was just recently awarded to a consortium of Stacy Whitbeck and Skanska.
Yep. Great. No, that's awesome. It's good to see. You know, I know that the Valley has been really trying to get a project, get some rail out there for a long time, so it's good to see that.
Yeah, we're very excited about it.
Another thing, so all of the whole country right now, we call it Biden bucks and the federal funding component. You know, I know it's unique with LA Metro because you have that Measure M, you have that state and county tax measure that you can kind of dip into to build your capital projects, but now there's this infusion of the federal dollars. So how does LA Metro look at that, and you know, is that a game changer for Los Angeles?
Yes, and you know, we're very dependent on federal dollars. You know, we're what you call a self-help county, right? So we have our own tax measures, we bring our own money to the table, and that's made us a very attractive investment to the federal government over the last, you know, decade and a half. We've been doing very well, you know, for the region internationally, or from a national perspective. We've been getting a lot of the transportation money, and we intend to keep doing that, because that's how we are able to let our Measure R&M dollars do more work if we can backstop that with federal assistance. So the San Fernando Valley project we just talked about is a perfect example. We're working to get a full funding grant agreement through the federal government. The Purple Line 1, 2, and 3, the regional connector, all built with participation from the federal government through a full funding grant agreement, and Crenshaw was built with the assistance of a TIFIA loan. You know, so. And as it relates to the infrastructure bill or the Biden bucks, it's certainly our intention to keep that trajectory alive. That we want it all, and we've got a lot of projects that are ready to go. We believe in getting projects shovel ready. We believe in getting them through the planning process so that they're ready to go when the money materializes.
Right. No, that's great. And then you brought up the buzzword. I mean, everybody's always been talking about this 28 for 28, you know, plan and all that stuff. So, you know, with the Olympics coming in, I can't believe it, but it's 5 years away. It feels like it's been talked about for a decade plus now. But, you know, how's LA Metro planning for that, and what are the challenges or the path forward on that?
Well, we're working through that right now, with all the partners that are involved in delivering the Olympics, the Olympic Committee, the City of LA, the County of LA, Metro. We're working through establishing the mobility plan, what the projects are that we're going to do to support the Olympics. One of the pitches, probably the biggest pitch of LA getting the Olympics, was that we're ready, right? Our venues are in place. Our transportation system is in place. And so that was the pitch. That's not to say that we don't have a lot of hard work ahead of us. Number one, we have to finish the Purple Line extension, right? That goes to Westwood, which is a key part of the Olympic Village. So that must happen. All the other projects I talked about that are under construction, those will be open by the Olympics. But it's really not for me to say what the mobility plan will be at the end of the day when they're done. I'm sure that we will get a call at some point to go build a bunch of projects.
Right.
But if you look at the successes LA had in '84 when we had the Olympics, it wasn't through conventional building of this transit infrastructure. It was just doing things a little differently and smartly. Like we didn't allow freight to be delivered in the afternoon. Right. All freight had to be at night. We did odd evens depending on what was on your license plate. We kind of embraced a work from home model back in the '80s.
Wow.
And we built probably the largest temporary bus system that this country has ever seen, right? And all you'll ever hear is people talk about how wonderful it was at the time that during that brief time of the Olympics, it was the best LA had ever functioned from a traffic perspective. So I would see more of that, right. Less conventional infrastructure. I'm guessing that there will be a lot of bus lanes,
yep.
And a much larger temporary bus network. We do have the notion of a car-free Olympics as part of it, so there will not be a lot of event parking, so people will be expected to take transit or alternative means of transportation to get to the Olympics. Oh, okay. So still a work in progress, but lots and lots of work to do to get ready.
So the bottom line is the pitch for LA was that it was already ready, so everything that you're putting in place now is just kind of whipped cream on top, right?
That's correct.
Okay, very good. One other, I know we have so much stuff we could talk for hours, but one of the things I did want to ask you is we're starting to really get a lot of conversations and internal discussions with regards to the move from traditional diesel, unleaded type vehicles into the electric vehicle space. Mm-hmm. So I know California as a whole, but Los Angeles specifically is very focused in on that, converting their existing bus infrastructure into electric vehicles. So any updates on that or your thoughts or opinions?
Oh, absolutely. So we have a board policy to convert to electric by 2030. I think the technology is not really there, and so we're working to get a couple more years on that to be able to realize that goal. But we're in the very early stages of electrifying our fleet. We have electrified the G line, which is formerly the Orange line. It's a bus rapid transit line in the valley that is all serviced by electric buses. So we have done partial electrification of a couple of our bus divisions, and we've built chargers on the right-of-way of that particular project. We're working to do the same thing on the Silver Line, which is another bus rapid transit that goes from El Monte down to Harbor Gateway in the South Bay. I believe that'll be running in the next year and a half. And then we get into the full-scale electrification of our entire bus fleet, which is 2,000 odd buses. And that means we have 11 bus divisions where we operate all of our buses. They all have, just on average, about 200 buses apiece. Each one of them needs to be electrified with charging equipment and to be able to bring the power in to push those charges to the buses. It's a very, very large infrastructure program that we're just in the very beginning of. But the good news is that the technology is starting to be there. We do have two different types of buses that we're using, and they're working great. I think the real difficulty with achieving those goals is on the infrastructure side and being able to charge all of these buses, bring the appropriate power in, but then also be able to have the space within the bus division to fit all the buses while we have all the charging equipment. So
right. Well, I was looking at a a rendering, and one of the things I wasn't even thinking about was actually physically getting the buses out of the facilities. So if a bus in the front is fully charged, but all behind it are a bunch of batteries that are charging. How do you get that bus out? So now you have to change the whole infrastructure so you can get bus one out of there, even if it's behind a bunch of other
exactly
buses.
our problem. And most of our yards are stacked parking like that.
Correct.
So we have the same kind of issue.
Yeah. No, that's very aggressive.
Not to mention that the space the charging equipment takes. We don't have a lot of space at these places to store buses, and the charging equipment takes space.
Right, right.
A lot of things to work through.
Well, I think the whole country's looking at you guys.
Yeah, it looks like we're it.
Yeah.
So.
Well, all right. So last question. I think from a construction standpoint, you have this massive program, but there's a lot of agencies out there with these massive programs. So, I mean, how do you, where do you see that as a resource issue, and from maybe from a packaging standpoint, you know, do you look to make smaller packages much larger, or break some of these packages into bite-sized pieces so that there's more construction companies can actually take on that, or what's the path there from an LA Metro's perspective?
Well, you had mentioned resource issues. I mean, we see resource issues everywhere we look when you're developing such a large program, and we're not the only one doing it, right? So we see resource issues from a internal staff perspective of Metro, being able to find enough people to push our program forward, you know. We see resource issues on the professional services side with the design companies, you know, because a lot of the kind of stuff we do in the transit world is pretty specialty engineering type stuff, and there's usually resource issues as it relates to that. And then we see resource issues in the construction market and the trades. You know, so I think all of us as an industry need to take a hard look at what we're doing and figure out how to solve our resource issue. And a lot of it has to do with bringing young talent into our industry and bringing them up. That was an indirect answer to a somewhat direct question, I know. In terms of packaging and breaking projects up, we look at everything on a project-specific basis. I think our transition to alternative delivery has helped in some way or another with being able to have the right discussions in a transparent way with the industry to make sure the projects are right sized and the risks are appropriate to be able to handle the size of the project. So I think we're moving in the right direction on that. But that's kind of what keeps me up at night is just thinking through how we're going to bring the talent into this industry to accomplish what we all want to accomplish.
Right. No, that's great. Well, Tim, I appreciate you. It's great being back here in LA, and maybe we can go get a beef sandwich at Philippe's or something like that.
I would love that. So we're not going to talk basketball at all? Is that not on the menu?
If you want it. I don't like to tell that story, but you can tell it.
No, I won't tell it. But you're welcome to come and play with us whenever you want.
Yes.
We miss you.
I miss you too. So thanks again, Tim. And one of the things I would like to do, as you know, I know what you guys are doing at LA Metro and always very interested in it. We've been talking about progressive design build a lot and these collaborative delivery methods, and I know you're getting in the beginning stages of G-Line and East San Fernando's just kicking off, and that's both in progressive design build, but love to come back in the next few months or something and kind of get updates on that and kind of get some lessons learned, some challenges, success stories and stuff like that. So wishing you the best of luck and hoping that you guys are able to deliver all these projects on time and under budget.
That's the plan. Thank you. And I'll be glad to come back whenever you like, buddy.
Thanks, Tim.
All right. Thank you, Steve.